Is David Jiricek ready to make an impact in the NHL this season? Is Stanislav Svozil ready to be a more consistent Blue Jacket in the lineup? Those are questions that we figure out today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Hayden Houshorn. With me is my co-host, Jay Foster. We're here to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of your favorite team and ours, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get going, we want to thank you for making this your first listen every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, YouTube, and the SiriusXM app. Today we are doing season reviews for our guys, David Jiricek and Stanislav Svozil, both of them from the nation of Czechia. This was a very tough one to figure out too, by the way, because I was like, Czech Republic, is it Czechia? But I like Czechia. So we're going to roll with Czechia for this whole episode. And David Jiricek was a guy, Jay, that helped Czechia get to a silver medal in 2023 in the World Juniors, which was one of the more impressive things a Czechia team has done since in the last 15 years, since they won a gold medal with guys like Jaromír Jágr, and Pete Svoboda really was the last well-known defenseman to come out of Czechia, which has been forever. Looking at the list, Czechia has tons of guys coming out of their country. David Pastrnak, one of them. So, like, there's tons of names on that list. Pete Svoboda really is the last one that you can find. And not a lot of people even remember him unless you are a big early 2000s hockey fan. So here comes David Jiricek over to the NHL. He's playing defense. And this dude, I think, absolutely carried Czechia team all the way to the gold medal game. And they lost. But then David Jiricek gets drafted 6th overall in 2022. He comes to Cleveland. He lights it up his first year. He has 38 points in 55 games, plays a couple games for the Blue Jackets. This guy just seems like a stud. Like, he just gives off future Norris Trophy candidate vibes. Like, he just, like, I can't, like, everybody's on the ice watching him play. But Jay, I mean, you love this guy. I know you love this guy. We've talked about him a million times. Maybe the pressure is really high on him this upcoming season, but let's just talk about the year he had with the Monsters and the little games he played with the Blue Jackets. Just your overall thoughts on David Jiricek.
Yeah, you've just covered it. I talk about the guy all of the time. I love him. He was, up until they drafted Adam Fantilli, I thought he was the best prospect in the Blue Jackets system and it wasn't particularly close. I know a lot of people love Kent Johnson. I know a lot of people love all kinds of different prospects that the Blue Jackets have. But to me, Jiricek was just a cut above the rest. I had him ranked second on my unofficial, I am not a professional scout or prospect evaluator in any kind of way, but just in terms of the little research that I had done in doing draft prep for this show, I had David Jiricek ranked second. Of all of the players. I had him ranked above Juraj Slafkovský. I had him ranked above Simon Nemec. I had him, the only guy that I thought was better than him is Shane Wright. And I think Logan Cooley's probably going to challenge for that sooner rather than later. But David Jiricek, like you said, he's a stud. He was phenomenal in the AHL this season. He was probably the Monsters'. You could argue he was their best player. I think Trefik Smolanski could argue that title as well. But David Jiricek, as an 18-year-old, had 38 points in 55 games. He was the leading rookie scorer for the Monsters. And I just looked it up before recording. There were only 2 rookie defensemen that had more points than him this season. One of them was Riker Evans, who was drafted a year before him and was, I believe, 20 by the time the season finished. He had 44 points in 71 games. And Jeremy Poirier of the Calgary Wranglers, he was 21 by the time the season finished, and he had 41 points in 69 games. So David Jiricek was 6 points behind the highest scorer rookie defenseman, and he did that in 16 fewer games, if I'm doing my math right. This kid is good. He's got some work to do. He is by no means perfect. I think his skating needs a lot of work, but he's got that big booming shot from the point. His situational awareness is fantastic. Like you said, he was a big part of Czechia reaching the gold medal game for, I believe, the first time since 2001. Stanislav Svozil, also on that team, was the captain of that team, in fact. But David Jiricek, he really carried this team. I believe he scored the game-tying goal that sent it to overtime in the gold medal game. And then obviously we know what happened. Connor Bedard happened, as I think is probably going to happen a lot of times in the future. But David Jiricek, man, I can't say enough good things about this kid. He was a guy that last season, and I spent all offseason talking about it. I was like, this kid is going to make the Jackets out of camp. This kid is going to be a Blue Jacket next season. He wasn't. He went down to Cleveland, ended up playing in Cleveland for most of the season. He had 2 games with the Blue Jackets where I thought he looked fine. He looks NHL ready. This season's going to be an interesting one because to me, he feels like the perfect guy to slot into that missing, like that open space in the top 4 that we have right now. But I don't think it's a given. I think there are other guys there, Adam Boquist, Jake Bean, Andrew Peak. There are guys that could challenge for that spot. I think David Jiricek is better than all of them. But he's got what it takes. He was NHL ready as an 18-year-old. He was maybe the most NHL ready of anyone in last year's draft. And I don't think I'm gonna show my ignorance here. I don't think anyone from the first round of last draft finished the season in the NHL. I believe Slavkovsky was the only guy that made it past his 9 games. And then he got injured. So
I was going to say, we know Babcock's, we know how he treats young guys in the organization. So unfortunately, that is crazy to think about. It is hard to imagine a reality where David Jiricek, for some reason, is not on this upcoming opening night lineup. Jay, could you imagine if he wasn't? Like how angry Blue Jackets fans would be, me included, who was really excited to get Mike Babcock for tons of reasons. But one of the downsides is he's one of those older coaches. And if he, unfortunately, is just going to be that guy, be that hard-o coach that makes it difficult for young guys to make their way in the league, then I'm going to be very frustrated because I think David Jiricek is a Calder candidate, questionably a Norris Trophy candidate, maybe in a couple of years. I'm not calling it this early, but I'm saying like this guy can do that thing where the puck gets to him and he looks like he's going to hit a hard one-timer, but his stick just stops right on the puck. And then he moves it on a good pass or something, or he gets a good shot off. He puts genuine fear in opposing penalty kill units. He is a dominant force on the power play. I cannot wait to see what happens when you get him on a sheet with Zach Werenski, Patrick Laine, Johnny Gaudreau. Who cares who else is? Cole Sillinger could be in there. They're getting a goal no matter what. There's just so much. I don't want to be ageist towards David Jiricek just because he's young. He looks like he is ready to dominate the NHL. That's just what he looks like on the tape. And you said that he could use some better skating. I'd actually like to pick your brain on that because a lot of David Jiricek highlight tapes are just him on the power play, which to be fair, he doesn't need to do a lot of skating when you're on the power play because you got an extra man on the ice and there's just more guys to cover ice. And you're setting up in the zone if you're running a good power play. A lot of Jackets fans don't know what a good power play is. It just seems like just seems like the Blue Jackets have never been good on the power play, Jay. So to get him on that unit seems like an automatic layup to me.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, there's not a ton of skating there's not a ton of explosive skating, I would say, in the power play. It's a lot of kind of you stand still and then you move, and then you stand still and then you move. The issue I have with Jiricek is that he has one of those weird skating styles where, like, I'm sure it's very efficient and like he gets to where he's going. He doesn't look fast, and that's not. I don't think you need to look fast to get where you're going on time, But I think he needs some work doing kind of like. I mean, you play hockey, you understand. Those first 3 strides where you really kind of that's what makes the difference. If you get a good first 3 strides, then you're off, you're away. I think that's where he needs to do the work. I think his edge work is fine. I think his like straight line skating is fine. For me, it's a little bit more of the kind of it's the little things, which it feels insane to say that about someone who, is he even 19 yet? I don't think has he even turned, when did he turn 19? He turned, okay, yeah, he's 19 now. But it's just the little things. I think he doesn't need. There's nothing that I look at his game and I'm like, wow, he needs to change that immediately, or he's not going to be in the NHL. And I just pulled up a bunch of like scouting reports on him by a bunch of different people. Where's the one I was looking at? The Jackets canon has him. There's a bunch of really good quotes here, but Corey Pronman, arguably the best defenseman in this class, close to an NHL-ready right-shot defenseman, size, bomb of a shot, big hit ability. That's something I think people are going to really like about him, by the way. He will straight up murder a guy. He's enormous
He's big.
Again, for
he's
a
6'4". Yeah.
Yeah, 6'4", 210 pounds. Like, he's got some muscle to put on, I think. But again, maybe 5 to 10 pounds, and he's 19. He's not done filling out yet. It's really weird to the way that people talk about how literal teenagers are not big enough or strong enough to play in the NHL, because like he's 19. He's gonna get stronger. He's gonna get bigger. If he still needs to put weight on when he's 22, then yeah, we'll have that conversation. But I don't know. To me, David Jiricek is maybe the most NHL ready prospect that the Blue Jackets have. And I am including Adam Fantilli in that.
I like it. It's a fun topic. Maybe sometime we could do who we think is going to be the rookie MVP next season, because Fantilli versus David Jiricek. Obviously, Fantilli is maybe the favorite in that one, but David
Blue
Jiricek
Jackets could conceivably have 2 Calder finalists on their team next season.
That'd be awesome.
I don't think they will, but it's conceivable.
Yeah. And with that comes very high expectations, obviously. I think that's one of these things where I look at all the individual talent that the Blue Jackets have, and I'm like, man, if a coach can just come in and just get this team to play together for just 10 seconds on the ice, like how much damage could this team do against some of the better teams in the league? But let's keep the topic on.
I will say to that, Mike Babcock is one of those coaches that he will bring structure, and that might be what this team needs. I think a lot of the issues that happened last season because of a lack of structure. Do I agree with all of Babcock's coaching strategies? No, not necessarily. But at the end of the day, he's been a coach for a long time. He's talked a lot about the stuff he's learned coaching in college, but he understands how to structure. He understands team structure, and I see a lot of comments talking about, specifically when we're talking about the defenseman and Babcock, is that Babcock likes to have set defensive pairs, and he likes to have a left defenseman and a right defenseman and a left defenseman and a right defenseman all the way down. David Jiricek is a right defenseman. That spot next to Zach Werenski is open, so that does work in his favor more than maybe Bean or Peak, who I believe are both left defensemen that can play on the right side. So to me, it really kind of comes down to, is David Jiricek better on Zach Werenski's other side than Adam Boqvist?
It's fun conversation that we need to keep having here on who his best line mate is. We'll do that in just a second on Locked On Blue Jackets. First things first, I got to tell you about the partners with Locked On, AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports a whole body health. Guys, I drink this thing literally every day. I gave AG1 a try because I was getting tired of taking so many supplements. I mean, I'm in my mid-20s now, but even all of a sudden, my wife's just handing me like, hey, you got to take magnesium, you got to take vitamin D. And I'm like, this is too much for my brain to follow. So I started rocking with AG1, a health and boost and energy, immune system support. I hated taking those pills. It's a supplement that actually tastes really good. I drink AG1 in the morning, in the afternoon, before I go to the rink. I drink it sometimes when I get back from the rink. It's a great replenishing tool that I use after a long workout. It makes me feel like I'm doing something good for my body, like I'm giving my body the nutrition it craves, like I'm covering my nutritional basis. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplemental routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out. All right, we're doing season review for David Jiricek, Blue Jackets' first-round draft pick in 2022. He played 55 games with the Monsters this year. That's where I think he really made a huge impact for me, because he didn't put up any points in the games he played in Columbus, but you saw a dominant player in Cleveland, a guy that put up 38 points in 55 games, had 6 goals himself. A guy like Trey Fix-Wolansky absolutely benefited from David Jiricek being a Cleveland Monster. Those guys on the power play were just money. And Trey Fix-Wolansky, a guy that I think is going to have flashes of Johnny Gaudreau in the future. Well, hey, we already have Johnny Gaudreau. And if he gets on a power play with David Jiricek, it's going to be something special. So no doubt, I think you and I, Jay, both agree David Jiricek needs to be on the first power play unit, at least the second power play unit. At the very least, I think he needs to be on the first opening night roster.
I mean, the power play, and this is probably something we can talk about a little bit later down the line, is what does a successful power play unit look like for this team? I don't love having 2 defensemen on a power play unit, and you've got to think that Zach Werenski has that PP1 job. Basically, it's his until he decides he doesn't want it anymore. But there is a lot of guys, and then, you look at the guys that you can have on that second power play unit. You've got Boquist. Nick Blankenberg is an excellent option for that PP2 point. Does David Jiricek play a forward role in that? Does he play from 1.5 walls? Does he? I don't know how a power play one power play with this team looks like. Again, maybe this is something that I could look into. Go back to Mike Babcock's Leafs power play units and see what kind of what's kind of happening there. But in the future, yes, absolutely, David Jiricek is a first power play unit player. As of right now, I don't know that he excels with Zach Werenski on the ice at the same time.
That's true. I can't forget about 8. I can't forget about the great 8, and we're getting him back this year. That's going to be really exciting. Who do you think is the best player for Jiricek to play with? Because I thought initially a guy like Andrew Peeke could really use him as a partner, just because I feel like Peeke is that guy that has just been waiting for he's good in the older brother role, but also he can't carry that line. And I feel like having a guy like David Jiricek might help take a little relief on a guy like Andrew Peeke, who is maybe going to be here for a long time. I don't know. It seems like he's one of the players that the Blue Jackets organization loves right now.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if that changes with the new coach, but my vote would be for Andrew Peeke. You're saying off the bat, Werenski would be
100%. Werenski. In my mind, the top 4 should be should be in any combination you like. Jiricek, Werenski, Provorov, Severson. And I know that we've kind of just stapled Provorov and Severson together for the purposes of finding Zach Werenski a defense partner. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that you put David Jiricek on that second pairing with Provorov, who, again, I always think that Provorov is older than he is, but he was the same draft as Zach Werenski. He was taken a pick before him, I believe. So it's not like he's old and useless. But I wonder if that's what they'll do, is it gives Jiricek that ability to be a little bit more offensively minded, because Provorov is more of a two-way guy that can be offensively minded, can be defensively minded. Jiricek is kind of the same way. So if one of them wants to go forward, the other one can stay back, and vice versa. I don't hate that as a combination, and I think limiting Jiricek's minutes is not a bad thing as well. I don't necessarily think that he needs to be playing the Zach Werenski 28-minute a night, the top pairing defensive numbers. But yeah, I would be as long as Jiricek is in the top 4, I think I'm happy. I don't want to see David Jiricek getting third line minutes. If you're going to play him on the third line and no offense to, guys like Andrew Peak, guys like Eric Branson, who are going to be those third line guys this season, if you're going to play him on the third line, send him back to the AHL. Let him be the number 1 defenseman there. There's a really fine line with young defensemen, I think. And I know that we're 20 minutes in and we haven't gotten to Stanislav Svozil yet, so that might be tomorrow's episode, honestly, because I have a lot more to say about David Jiricek.
I got a lot to say
I had as much to say as I did. But there's a really fine line with young defensemen in terms of throwing them in the deep end versus sheltering them. And I don't know that he's going to learn anything playing limited third line minutes with a guy like Eric Branson. If he's, I don't know. I just put him in the top 4 or send him back to the AHL, where at least he can be the guy on the blue line. Because it feels to me like his game, he doesn't need to. How do I want to put this? Obviously, there's going to be an adjustment period. I'm not saying that he's going to go out there and immediately become an all-star in the NHL. The way he did in the AHL, which, by the way, named Cleveland's AHL All-Star and then immediately got injured. Just in case you were wondering if he's meant to be a Blue Jacket, obviously, if he's injured immediately before the All-Star game, he is definitely meant to be a Blue Jacket. But I don't know. I don't see him. I don't see the benefit in playing him third-line sheltered minutes like that. I could see him playing second-line minutes. I could see him playing top minutes, but you either send him back to Cleveland for him to be the guy, or you pair him with the guy in Columbus, because this is a top 2, minimum top 4 defenseman. But he could be the number 1 defenseman on this team in as soon as 5 years.
Yeah, no, I think as soon as 2 years he could be. Like, he has that Cale Makar kind of energy on any team. Like, no matter what team he's on, he is going to stick out because he's just so locked in on the game of hockey. Like, he doesn't get rattled by the stage, doesn't get rattled by the opponent. He just, like, guys, Czechia hadn't won anything significant in international hockey since 1998, when they won a gold medal in the Winter Olympics over Russia, by the way, with their last great defenseman, Petr Svoboda, who I wonder is somehow related in my mind to the great Jeff Svoboda, who writes for the Blue Jackets. I'm just telling myself that. But there's a lot of pressure on this guy. There has to be a lot of pressure, because all the great players that come out of Czechia are usually forwards. And now here he is about to make his real NHL debut. And I think he's going to light it up right away. I just have a huge feeling he's going to. And you're exactly right. If he's not playing in Columbus, he better be playing top line for Cleveland. Like, he needs to be the dude on any team he's going to be at, because it's just, you got to give him room to breathe. Doesn't matter how old he is. And soon before we know it, he is going to be old. But yeah, I think they need to get him in there right away. All right.
Just in terms of, sorry, one last thing. In terms of Czech defensemen, excuse me, only 9 Czech defensemen have made the NHL to this point. Leading the way is Radko Gudas, who has 164 points in 682 games. It is not out of the realm of possibility that David Jiricek could be the best Czech defenseman in the history of the league. Again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here.
Yes, we are. Petr Svoboda was pretty good. He had a pretty good career, but I mean, Radko Gudas also having an awesome career. What he did, pretty much dog walking the Florida Panthers all the way to the Stanley Cup final was pretty awesome. All right, we are going to continue the conversation on Jiricek, maybe talk a little bit of Stanislav Svozil. We'll see what time has for us in store here on Locked On Blue Jackets. Keeping the conversation rolling here on Locked On Blue Jackets, we just are doing our season reviews for defenseman David Jiricek and also defenseman Stanislav Svozil, who was on that same silver medal team that Czechia had in.
Sorry, I do need to issue a correction here.
Please
because
do.
We'll get mad. Otherwise, I had the wrong tab clicked. There have been many Czech defensemen in this league. And you are correct. Petr Svoboda is up there. 399 points in 1,028 games. Marek Zidlicki is above him. Thomas Kabalé, who I had forgotten about. And then Robert Hamrlik is currently leading Czech defenseman with 638 points in 1,395 games. So,
wow. There you go.
Radko Gudas is not the most prolific Czech defenseman to ever play. He has just the highest scoring active one. So I wanted to get that out there.
You also crushed a huge narrative that we just were rolling with as media. You know, sometimes we just make these big ideas up like, oh yeah, David Jiricek, it's all up to him to, crown to
be the only good player ever to come out of the Czech Republic.
No, it is not. That is not the case at all. We just like to build those ideas up in our heads because at the end of the day, Jay and I we're just fans, man. That's just how we look at it. And in my eyes, there is a lot of pressure on him because of how I feel. Like the Blue Jackets spent their first round pick on him, the 6th overall in that draft. And I think he's good enough. Listen, I think he's good enough to win a Calder, which is the Rookie of the Year. I think if you look, there's been 3 defensemen that have won it in the last 8, I want to say 8-9 years. So they like to give it on and off. And I think they're on a run here of giving it to some forwards in a row. Matty Berniers and just won it this past year. But he is that caliber in my mind. David Jiricek is good enough to come into the season and win Rookie of the Year in a couple of years in 2025 to 2026, that season, fall of 2025. I think David Jiricek, if he stays on the track, if he stays healthy, that's also that's the biggest thing of all this. But if he stays healthy, he is on track to being a big-time Norris Trophy candidate guy going into that season. That's just how I personally feel about what he's put on the ice to this point. If you're talking about this past season, Jay, if we're talking about a grade for David Jiricek, I'm feeling a B+ for him.
I'm giving him an A. I don't care. Okay. I thought he was the MVP for the Monsters for a long stretches of this season. And I think that joint honors go to Trey Fix-Wolanski there. But to do what David Jiricek did, to come in as an 18-year-old in probably the 3rd best professional hockey league in the world, and to outscore basically every other rookie defenseman. I don't know what he did against just regular defensemen. Let me see if I can find that out real quick. But like, it's an easy A for me. Like he is in the top. He was 24th among defensemen. A defenseman of any age. In the AHL this season, and he only played 55 games. A lot of these guys played the full 71, 72, however many games there are in. I think the AHL is weird. Some teams play 70, some teams play 72. It is a godless league down there. But yeah, it's the easiest A that I've handed out this season, I think, apart from like maybe Johnny Gaudreau,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good. I mean, I thought about giving him an A2. It's just I'm basically punishing him for playing 2 seconds in the NHL and not putting up a point. That's all. That's the only thing I'm punishing him for. He had an A effort, and he's an A. He's an all-around A draft pick. He's a good-looking guy as well. Like I think he's a stud. I think he's ready to take on a big-time role with the Columbus Blue Jackets. I think he's going to shine. I think he's going to shine immediately. Yeah, so you gave him an A. I gave him a B+. I was hard on him because he played 4 NHL games and didn't have a point. So that's a little unfair, but that's just me.
But
that's just me being
if you
bitter.
look at, like, again, Locked On Blue Jackets, get your bingo cards out. I did have this tab open and did close it. His game log for this season. So he played 4 games. All strengths, he played 72 minutes, had 5 shots on goal. His possession numbers weren't great. I would be really interested to know who he was playing with, because I don't remember off the top of my head who his line mate was, but
couldn't have been great, is what you're saying.
No. Let's see. It looks like he mostly played with Jake. He played of defenseman. He played with the most time with Jake Christensen, and then Gavrikov. So with Christensen, the two had 13 shot attempts for 17 against. With Gavrikov, it was 8 for 11 against. And then for those two players, Jiricek had 60% with with Christensen, he had 43%. On his own, he had 60. Christensen without Jiricek had 50. And then with Gavrikov, Jiricek with Gavrikov had 42. Without, he had 44. Gavrikov without Jiricek had 22. So, again, very, very small sample size. I can't state this enough. It's very similar to yesterday's episode where we talked a lot about Patrick Laine playing center for 2 games. 4 games is a very, very small sample size, especially because he only played about 16 minutes a game. But I think it's, I don't know, I think it feels reductive. We're like, well, he didn't score a point in 4 games, so I'm knocking him down an entire letter grade.
Yeah, it's rude. It's definitely rude.
It personally upsets me. He probably doesn't care, but I don't know. It feels so tough to give him a grade based on those 4 games, because there's just so few things you can draw from those games. You know, all we've got is the tape. We can say, hey, I really like that play he did. I really like that play he did. He did get some power play time, I believe, which is always useful. Again, I don't know where that is, and we do need to wrap this episode. So we don't have time for Stanislav Svozil today. We'll have to fold him into a different episode somehow, somewhere. We'll talk about Stanislav Svozil at a later date because I also love him.
Listen, he's the hidden gem.
37 on the power play. So again, you can't take anything from that.
Okay. How about this? Locked On Blue Jackets gives him an A-.
Fine.
Just think about it. The average.
I will compromise in this one specific situation. I will compromise.
The average of you giving him an A, the average of me giving him a B+ leads to an A-, and you can just make it the smallest minus possible, and just over it say had 0 points in 4 NHL games. That's it, and that can be my bitter that I deal with, because listen, this guy's gonna be awesome. He just needs a little bit of time. Like he's worked his whole life to get to the NHL. Can't blame him for being a little bit nervous. And we know we don't know because we're just fans, but we've heard that the NHL speed is just a lot different. So okay, he also didn't give up a ton of goals either. You know, he didn't have a point, but that's because the puck didn't bounce his way once in 4 games. So it's fine. It's one of those things that he'll probably get a point in his first shift. Let's be honest. He'll come out whenever it is this year. He's gonna have a point. He'll probably have a goal in his first shift.
Just because you gave him that B+, he's gonna be like, man, I'm gonna show that dude from that podcast. First NHL goal on his first shot of the season. Like, let's do this.
Yeah. Yep, that's what's gonna be. So are we doing Stanislav Svozil tomorrow, or are we doing Blankenberg?
Let's
talk about this live right now.
I know, we'll figure this out live. Let's do Blankenberg tomorrow, and then we'll mix Svozil in with the Tim Burney episode, which is coming next week. So
Gotcha. That's all we
I will
have.
edit this.
It's probably going to need a little bit of that. I mean, we talked a lot about our guy, David Jiricek. That's all we have for you guys today. Tomorrow, you heard it yourselves. We're going to be talking about Nick Blankenberg. His season review is on the docket. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Thank you for making this your first listen every day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, and the SiriusXM app. My name's Hayden Houshorn. You can find me on Twitter at HaydenH971. You can find my co-host Jay Foster on Twitter at _Jacob Foster. You can also find the show on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. You can email us lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.